One morning in October of 1826, sailors were loading 3 barrels labeled bitter salts aboard a boat at George's Dock in Liverpool, England. There was such a foul stench coming from the barrels that the captain had them removed to the Old City Deadhouse to be investigated. There, dock officials made the horrific discovery of 11 bodies of men, women, and children that were salted and pickled inside the barrels. The barrels were supposed to be transported to the port of Leyes, Scotland, near Edinburgh. It is believed the bodies were headed to desperate anatomists and Scottish medical schools who were paying between £10 to £15 for bodies to be brought in from England. There were only 55 legal medical cadavers to be distributed each year in Scotland, but demand was so high at the time, it is believed that anatomists were dissecting over 500 illegal bodies a year. The shipper who had transported the containers to the dock revealed that he had taken them from a large house with cellars situated opposite of what is now the Everyman Theatre. The home was owned by Reverend James McGowan, who ran a school in the home, but rented the cellar to a mysterious Scotsman who stored and sold fish oil. Detectives knocked down the locked cellar door and found barrels and sacks of 22 bodies of men, women, and children. One barrel only contained the bodies of babies soaked in brine. The police determined that most of the bodies had come from a nearby cemetery, but a few may have come from Cambridge Street workhouse that sold the bodies of tenants instead of giving them a proper burial. The mysterious Scotsman was never found, but James Donaldson, a body snatcher who may have been connected to the case, was convicted and sentenced to a year in Kirkdale Prison. Today, the home used by the Scotsman is now considered one of the most haunted places in Liverpool. Mysterious sounds are often heard coming from the old cellar. Cold spots are felt all over the home. Unknown voices and whispers are often heard at night, and some people have even claimed to have felt invisible hands grabbing them, as if someone or something was reaching out for help. The Edinburgh Vaults in Edinburgh, Scotland are a series of chambers that were built into the 19 arches of the South Bridge in 1788. The chambers were used by taverns, cobblers, and other merchants for storage. However, they quickly deteriorated due to dampness caused by poor waterproofing of the arches. This, combined with the poor air quality in the vaults, led to them being abandoned and left to the poorest citizens to take shelter in. Crime ran rampant, with prostitution, robbery, and murder, all becoming a normality within the underground life of the vaults. Each of the vaults have their own separate entrance and hauntings. The Nadry Street vaults are haunted by a poltergeist that controls one of the rooms. New light bulbs burst as soon as they're replaced. Women have been attacked when they enter the room. People often faint if they stay too long. The sounds of whispering, children crying, heavy footsteps, shuffling noises, and whimpering can be heard coming from inside the vaults. Others have reported being pushed and scratched by invisible forces while inside. The Blair Street vaults are another section that are well known for being haunted by multiple ghosts. Groaning noises and children crying are frequently heard from within its chambers. These vaults are home to a very gentle spirit, and also a very sinister one. An apparition of a kind-looking old man appears in one of the rooms, and is usually seen making shoes, earning him the name, the Cobbler. The sinister spirit has been dubbed Mr. Boots, as he gets angry when people enter his room with lights. Mr. Boots can be very violent towards women, and is known to push and choke them if they enter his room. His presence can be felt in every room of the Blair Street vaults, except for the Cobbler's room. Bruce's Castle and Cave on Rathlin Island in Northern Ireland is full of countless ghost stories and legends from local fishermen, hikers, and tourists. The island was a known sanctuary and hiding place for centuries until Sir Francis Drake and Sir John Norrie overtook the island and castle. Those living on the island quickly surrendered, but Norrie's forces slaughtered the helpless 400 civilians and 200 castle defenders, including the sick, old, and dying. Today the castle is in ruins. People have reported hearing screams and cries coming from the old site. a ghostly figure of a man in old leather armor is often seen guarding the castle perimeter before vanishing. One spirit attempts to interact with people. She is known as the Brown Lady and walks the castle grounds and approaches visitors as if trying to speak, but she never says anything before fading away. The cave on Rathlin Island is believed to be the most haunted place in Northern Ireland. It is thought to have been bewitched long ago by the pagans who first inhabited the island. People report hearing moans and whispers coming from deep within the cave. Legend has it that the Scottish king Robert the Bruce and his men hid in the cave from the English after their brutal defeat, waiting for their forces to regroup during the First War of Scottish Independence. Robert the Bruce eventually defeated the English and was recognized as the true king of Scotland. According to local folklore, the king never died, that he and his men have returned to the old cave and entered into an enchanted sleep, waiting until the day they will awake and unite their fellow Scotsmen to defend against those who would attack Scotland. Recently, a group of fishermen settled into the cave to take a break and make tea. As they gathered and poured their cups, a hand appeared out of the darkness and placed an extra cup out to be filled. The fishermen quickly poured their mysterious guest a cup, too afraid to look up and see what was lurking in the darkness. The hand then disappeared back into the depths of the cave with its cup. In Dublin, Ireland, Cavannagh's Pub holds the proud title of being the oldest family-run pub in the city. The pub opened in 1833, and it soon became known as the Gravediggers Pub, because it was located right next to Glasnevin Cemetery. It became a custom for gravediggers in the cemetery to shovel dirt against the pub's wall to signal they wanted a pint. Many body snatchers took sanctuary in the pub and were known to enjoy a pint or two after a night of hard work. Today, the pub is said to be haunted by an old man dressed in tweeds who enjoys sitting at the bar drinking a pint before quickly disappearing. Glasnevin Cemetery opened a year before Cavannagh's Pub, but it quickly became a hotspot for body snatchers to visit. The Dublin Anatomy School and Royal College of Surgeons required a vast number of bodies for dissection in Dublin. Adult bodies were worth £2, while bodies of children were sold by inch. 12-foot walls were built around the cemetery to protect from grave robbers and body snatchers. Watchtowers were quickly built along the perimeter, but it eventually became necessary for mobile watchtowers to be built and moved around to guard fresh graves. The cemetery tried placing heavy slabs over important graves, installed cages around others, and employed a team of watchmen to protect the remains of people's loved ones. Today, Glasnevin Cemetery is the final resting place of 1.5 million people across 124 acres. You don't have to worry about body snatchers, but the cemetery is believed to be haunted by several ghosts and ghouls. So you never know who or what you may encounter in the Glasnevin Cemetery. Our final story is by far the most heartbreaking. 5 Cottage Street is now the eternal home of a young girl who frantically wanders the upstairs searching for a way to escape. The Black Death ravaged York's population during the late 1300s. The family in the house had slowly watched all of their loved ones perish from one of the deadliest plagues on Earth. One night before one more tragedy occurred, this young girl was being tucked into bed when her parents noticed a red ring around the back of her neck. Distraught at the potential first sign of the horrible plague, they tucked her into bed, packed their things, and left York to never return. The last thing they did was the most horrendous of all. They locked all the doors to the home and painted a red cross on the door, the mark of the plague, so the residents in the city knew to quarantine the home and not to enter. The girl awoke and quickly found that she was locked upstairs and all alone. She desperately screamed and banged on the windows day after day for help. The house was just around the corner from the York Minster. Despite people going to church each Sunday and the market outside the home, no one dared to enter before they lifted the quarantine. They finally entered 3 weeks after the screams had stopped. They found that the corpse of the girl was not bloated from infection or disease, but her body was just skin and bones where she had slowly starved to death. The mark on her neck had been the early onset of measles and not the plague. So many people heard her screams each day and night, but did nothing to help her. Remember this story when you see someone in need. You never know what difference your actions can make when everyone around you is too worried about themselves to help those who need it most. Hey guys, Uncle Unit here. Today's video has been a collaboration with The Strangest. If you want to hear 5 more chilling stories from Europe, head over to their channel and make sure you tell them that Uncle Unit sent ya. And of course, as always, never forget. There's